Well, thank you all for joining me for the first webinar in the Garden series of the year. I appreciate you all coming. We are here both for Master Gardeners. This counts as Master Gardener, continuing education, as well as to the general public. So we hit a variety of topics, just a little bit of everything. It's not all about horticulture. Sometimes it's other stuff. I like to kind of go down the rabbit hole. So this one happens to be about trends in the what we call green industry. So horticulture falls into the green industry. So these are interesting and new trends that have popped up over time. Some of them you might notice and say, oh, that one's been around for a while. Some of them might be new. These are can be looked at both from a business perspective and from a consumer perspective. I was actually allowed to borrow this particular presentation from the greens. I think it's called what used to be the winter green, but now it's I believe it's called the summer green or something like that. So this actually will be a presentation that was originally given this summer, but these are up and coming trends. So if you're interested, you can drop your location in the chat box. I'm always interested to see where people come from. Sometimes we get folks from out of state. Sometimes we get them from around the state. It's always interesting to see. But I'm Lisa Klein. I am with the Ag and Natural Resources team in UGA Extension in Gwinnett County. We do a lot of outreach here in Gwinnett. One of my favorite things to do because it kind of lets me do a little bit of research and learn about all sorts of new and interesting topics. So let's go ahead and dive in. If you have questions, you've all been muted, but if you have questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat box and I will get to them at the end of the presentation, and hopefully we will have some good questions here. All right. So let's just dive right in. So these, again, as I said, these are all trends, things that are popping up, things that have been up and coming, things that maybe aren't quite here yet, but maybe over the next year or so you'll see more and more of them. So these are things you might want to try in your yard, in your property. And again, I try to share that it is perfectly fine if you don't have a big yard. Not everything has to go into a big yard. It's perfectly fine in a container garden. And if you just have a small stoop, or you have a balcony and you're in a condo or something like that, or maybe you only have a sunny window, that is absolutely fine. Gardening can happen in all different forms and facets, and you don't need, a plot of land to do that. So we try to throw some stuff in there about how to do those kinds of things in a limited space. But hey, if you're lucky and you do have a rather large yard, feel free, just go crazy on these. So the first one is edible landscaping. That one has been on our horizon for quite a while. There's a lot of people that have purchased a home and maybe it has some kind of boring landscaping out front. You got some boxwood looking things, maybe some nandinas, some other stuff that's just really kind of, boring. But edible landscaping. So this is where you're going to combine ornamental plants like those with plants that will produce food for you. One of my favorites is blueberries, incorporating blueberry bushes in amongst your landscape plants. Now, you have to have two. They got to bloom at the same time, or they got to overlap in blooming. Here we use rabbit eye blueberries, but if you're in a different area, you might use southern highbush in the southern part of the state. You might do northern highbush. If you're outside and up north, there's all sorts of different blueberry cultivars that would work. Just make sure that whatever you're looking at is correct for your area. But I love mixing blueberry bushes in with existing landscape plants. That way, not only do you get to do what the HOA wants you to do, but you also sneak in some of those edible plants. And I've seen folks take some cabbage plants and plant them behind other taller landscape plants. Where you might have ornamental cabbages, they've actually put real cabbages in. So doing a edible landscape of some sort, and that's not just fruit trees, folks. That's all sorts of stuff. Um, yeah, all of that. It's great, and I definitely suggest reaching out if to your extension folks. Again, extension. If you're not real familiar, you obviously found me. But if you're not really familiar, in a different county, you can always reach out to your extension office and they will give you all sorts of good ideas on edible plants that you can incorporate into your landscape. So, having said that, what other kinds of plants, what other things could you maybe do? Well, we know we have a lot of up and coming new homeowners that maybe this is their first home, the first time maybe they've moved out of a condo and they have more space, or maybe they just moved out into a condo and now they actually can do what they want. Chefs, we do pizza gardens in a pot. That can be like basil and tomato. You could have a salad container. There's all sorts of neat things. We do a lot of those in schools, so the kids can learn how to grow things like that. But you can certainly do them at home, and it's fun if you use a lot of herbs, especially that you put those in containers and you have them really handy by your deck. Or maybe you use rosemary as a landscape planting. It's very pretty and aromatic. But yeah, lots and lots of options. And so, see, the ideas fall under things that you can look for out in and about. So, if you're maybe at a craft festival, like here, we've got the Yellow Daisy. And then, of course, coming into the spring, we've got tons of other little festivals, um, uh, craft shows, and things like that. If you're looking for ideas for yourself, here's some ideas for you to do. One would be an edible garden kit. So let's say maybe you have a small side business or side gig where you do cut flowers and you sell those. Well, you might want to like branch out into edible garden kits. Like you could put three plants together in a pot and you could sell that. Um, and conversely, you might look for that. That might be something if you're out at the farmer's market and you see that, you're like, oh, that's a really good idea. I can get that. I've got my rosemary, I've got my thyme, I've got, my spaghetti pot, and I've got all my herbs here now. And yeah, let's roll. You could also do some landscape design upgrades for your HOAs, and this is high-end clients. But again, as I said, this is a mixture of kind of business and some ideas for folks that might be in that realm, as well as folks that are in the homeowner realm and are looking for new and different ideas. So, if you just have a boring old landscape with no edible plants, consider adding some. You can kind of bundle together and have herbs. Like you could have, as I mentioned, an herb garden in a pot. And fruit trees, you could plant those. HOAs, you do have to be careful usually about what you plant in your front yard. But in your backyard, a lot of times you can plant trees that you would prefer to have. And so there's no reason you have to have this big expanse of grass. You can add in fruit trees. Those could be, we stone fruit trees like peaches and plums, and then you could also think about apples. They do require a little more work here in and around zone 8A and B and 7B, where we are in the metro area, because we do have a lot of disease. So you have to be very aware about making sure you're spraying fungicides and insecticides, but you can grow them. So you just have to put some work into it. And then pollinator plants. You can mix in those pollinator plants with those herbs. A lot of them also, they're perennial herbs. They'll have blooms on them. So you can kind of double duty there. Not only are you using them for cooking, you're also using them for the bugs, and they're happy about that. All right. Climate conscious design. So we, over the last, I would say at least 3 or 4 years, it's usually either feast or famine here for rainfall. Right now, we're kind of in the throes of a mini drought, but since it's winter, we don't have to worry about evaporation quite as much in the Atlanta area. So we're about 7 to 9 inches behind in rainfall. So we're supposed to get some really good heavy rain tomorrow into Saturday, and that's a great thing. That'll definitely help. But in the summertime, we do struggle with the feast or famine. We get a lot of rain, and then the spigots turn off, and it's dry as a bone for like 3 weeks or a month, and you're having to water just to kind of keep things going. A lot of people don't want to deal with that kind of landscape. So, choosing plants that are more drought tolerant, fire resistant, that's kind of that's something you probably would look at more out west. Excuse me. But native adapted plants, plants that have been here for hundreds of years and have gotten used to the climate, don't need a ton of rain, very resilient, something you don't have to think about very often, something that's beautiful, that offers lots of really interesting views and colors. Like you can see here, you've got, maybe this one's probably more from out west, but you've got some succulents and you've got some evergreens. Those tend to be much more drought tolerant once established and can tolerate really bright sunlight. This probably would be very relevant to you if you've just moved into a new tract type home where you don't have many trees. Developers tend to cut everything down and then plant something back. But in the meantime, before that grows, you're stuck with a lot of sunlight. So picking plants like these that can tolerate a lot more sunlight, a lot less moisture, and are just not fussy, that's a bonus for folks like you. So you might look for in a business that does eco install packages. Maybe they have a variety of plants in a package. It's a package deal. And they come out and they site them and they install them. And you also, if you're in business for yourself, you may be a landscaper, you may know somebody who is, you can offer a package deal like this where you pick some of these plants, maybe some more drought tolerant pollinator plants, and then you can go and put those in people's landscapes. Not much fuss associated with them. They tolerate the conditions here very well, and it's a win-win for both sides. And so you can also look at, and again, this comes from both a business viewpoint and the homeowner viewpoint, but something that doesn't require a lot of muss and fuss. So some new home subdivisions come with the irrigation. So that's fine, but a lot don't, and it's costly to install one. So if you don't have to, and you can just pick some less fussy plants, that's perfect. And so this is also something that if you work with your local townships or municipalities, you can suggest to them that they want to maybe remove some of their fussier plants that require a lot of water and replace them with some more eco-conscious ones that don't require that. So I know we do have some folks that are really involved. They're on certain boards, and this would be a good cause to look at because it drops the overall water use, and we're always trying to be better about that. All right. Next up, natives and nativars. Okay, so what's a nativar? A nativar would be a native plant. Think of echinacea, purple coneflower. Okay. Well, there are cultivars of that. You have the Cherokee blends, which are not just purple, but they're like white and yellow and kind of a reddish maroon color. Those would be considered nativars. So it's a native plant that's been souped up. The blooms look a little bit more spectacular. Maybe they smell a little better. It basically just means that the plant breeders have gotten their hands on them and fiddled around with them a little bit to make them prettier or to make them more appealing to the general public so that people will buy more of them. There are some people that are really into native plants and they are just strictly natives and that's all they want. And these are kind of like on the fringe of that. So, but if you want something that is native, but you still want some of the beautiful stuff, this might be a good way to get a compromise if you want to look at it that way. So, customers that want sustainability and biodiversity. Um, but like if you've been always told you should have natives, but you don't know a lot about natives or why, this would be a good kind of way to look at it. So, yes, you're supporting a native population because you're getting some of those pluses of having the natives, but they're not too far fetched from the original natives. So, yes, they're just a little different. Plants are very interesting in themselves in that most times when breeders are looking for something different, they can go outside of the local area. Like we do have folks that will go over into zone 8 or zone 7 in other parts of the world, and they will look and search for plants that are growing there different than what we have. Unfortunately, that's how a lot of invasive type plants have gotten here. I mean, things have obviously hitched rides, but we do have some plants that have been brought over here and they did way too well. Kudzu, that's one of them. It was brought here as cattle feed, but has kind of taken over. You always have to be careful of that. But not always. Sometimes you'll find a plant that's growing locally, and it could maybe have a more vivid color than some of the others. It's just a genetic mutation, in other words. So, natural selection, in a way, it's produced something that's different than the parent plant. And breeders are always looking for things like that. So they can latch onto that and they can replicate it, and then they put it on the market and sell it. So you could come up with pollinator garden packages, or, and again, if you're on a board for a beautifying committee or something like that, this would be something that would be good because not everybody wants to go full native for everything, but having some natives in there or the nativars are a good kind of compromise. And you can also do signage to try to educate. If you're a master gardener, you know it's all about education. So educating folks on that this is a native or this is a nativar and getting the conversation flowing, a good thing, because then people are learning and you're able to educate. Natives are great because mostly they don't need a ton of hand holding to do well here. So this is be a good opportunity if you're working in a school or if you're working in a municipality or something like that. We do here in Gwinnett, we have folks that work in master gardeners that work in the schools and also in some of the other beautifying committees or even in HOAs. This would be a great way to kind of introduce them. All right, next up, rich riche or all green gardens. So you're doing kind of goodness, what are the monochromatic type design, but it kind of in a way, so it's all green, but we all know that with green that could be all sorts. So like these are all hostas that you see in this picture here, but hostas come in so many different shades that it's almost a shame to just call them green because we know that they're not all green, but they're very beautiful. So you're going to kind of have foliage type designs. You're not focusing on the flowers, so to speak. It's more about the foliage. So if we think about the types of plants that are going to be selected for foliage, hostas are probably the biggest one to come to mind. But there are others. You have conifers, evergreen type bushes. Some might have very small, tiny flowers, but conifers are there's such a wide range of heights and sizes and textures. Uh, you can go to a lot of these Japanese tea type gardens and you can see all of these fantastic conifers that are just out of this world. There's almost chartreuse colors like the bright greens and the dark greens, and then some variegations and things that you just don't typically see every day. But you want to stick with like one theme and kind of go from there. So, this could be considered premium because really it's kind of designer. You're sticking with one type of plant and you're kind of morphing out into that and getting a whole ton of different shades involved. It could be something very simplistic. You could have some type of ground cover in a shady situation with some hostas interspersed. And you could choose some variegations or some bright colors of green, dark colors, and it looks all very peaceful and monochromatic. It's very nice looking. It's very minimalist too. So if you don't like to do a lot of care or worry about a bunch of different types of plants in their care, This way you can focus on one or two types and you're just getting a bunch of varieties of the or a bunch of different cultivars. And if you're in business, then you might offer a package deal where you have five types of hosta and one type of ground cover. That would be something very interesting. If you sell at farmers markets, if you have a flower farm, if you have a little nursery, these are all options that you can look to kind of do something with because it's very pleasing to the eye, especially if you have them laid out in a nice flat with the ground cover and then the individual hostas in the presentation. So that could be something very interesting to look at. All right, sensory and wellness gardens. So these are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, both in construction and in use. So Dr. Sherry Dorn, who it has now she's moved on to a new position, formerly the state master gardener coordinator here in Georgia, is now a assistant professor over in at UGA in horticulture and wellness and horticultural therapy. So that kind of falls under these kinds of gardens fall under that. So these are going to be ones that you're going to see in maybe a school, a lot of times in a school, maybe in a hospice garden, maybe in a nursing home, things like that. You're going to look at plants that have a wonderful fragrance, maybe some interesting sound or texture, and something very neat like for sight. So like snapdragons, if you've ever played with them and you squish them, they talk. Well, they don't actually talk, but their little mouth moves. Something my grandma taught me. And it's just kind of fun. It makes gardening fun. And so you can go out there and have all sorts of different stuff and just really kind of dive into the intricacies of plants and all the different types of sensory you don't want to go to sensory overload, of course, but all the different things that would be interesting for that. So some ideas from business side or even from, a homeowner side, have a healing garden installation package. So you could have those, maybe some lamb's ears and maybe something with a really good fragrance. I'm trying to think of something like hyacinths in the morning bulbs. You could offer a variety of bulbs like hyacinth bulbs and some others. I mean that's my best thing to do. I go in the spring and I get a pot with a hyacinth in it and I bring it and I sit it next to my desk because I love the scent. It makes me feel springy and happy. But you could also partner with therapists or wellness centers. We do have some folks that volunteer in those areas and they're always looking for options for stuff like that. So thinking of plants that have all of these different feels and smells and sounds and sights, all would be very appropriate in a situation like this. And you can also have some educational signage for that as well. So lots of good ideas there. All right, vertical and small space solutions. So as I mentioned earlier, we have a lot of folks that live in condos and small lots. We just, as you get more and more urbanized and less suburban sprawl, we're really space is just at a premium, and we don't have a lot of that anymore. uh, Space in the way of a vertical garden is perfect. Now you can do containers too, but if you don't have a big area for containers, you just go up. You can do both, of course. But this is going to be probably for folks that love living in the condo life. They don't want to mow a yard. They don't want to have to take care of all of that vegetation, but they still like greenery. And that's going to be your urban, probably younger folks that have maybe moved out of their parents' house and are now kind of on their own, maybe before kids, but want that green space, want that feel of being outdoors, but have it indoors. And so you can do that. You can do it with here you see gardens that are on the exterior of a building and you've got herbs and some other stuff. You can actually do this inside too with living walls. I had a presentation that I did a couple years ago that gave some suggestions for living type walls. There are whole businesses around this model, landscape designers that will create designs for you. So if you're thinking about being a landscape designer, this is an option here. If you can go into that for living walls, there's a lot of businesses that put a lot of money into designing and building these and maintaining them. And so you could come up with maybe if you're at a farmer's market or even for your own backyard, small kits, and then adding services. So you can have workshops for master gardeners who might be in either in Gwinnett or in other places. You can do workshops on vertical gardening. I know that we have some of the nurseries like Pike Nurseries and some of the others that'll do these kind of hands-on type activities, but this is perfect for that. You can have a small fee, create a small set of some kind of container and then offer little pots that you put in the containers. Plus, there's all sorts of plans on the internet that you can purchase, and you can actually just purchase some of these living gardens where it just leans up against a wall. Very space saving, but you can still have your fresh herbs and everything else. Right. Oops, sorry about that. Okay, there we go. Interactive displays. So for people that want to get out into the gardens, these are going to be like your flower farms. Uh, you set up, if you ever go in the fall to some of the pumpkin patches or the apple orchards or things like that, a lot of folks here will go up to Blue Ridge. A lot of folks now live on social media and they like to take photos so that they can remember what they were doing. And I have a daughter who's in college, so I have experienced all of these. They had a bouquet bar at one of her sorority's Mother's Day events. I think it was last year. And there's a little cart that pulls up, and there's all sorts of flowers all around there. And then they had a beautiful little selfie zone that was decorated with flowers. And everybody got to go pick five flower stalks and put it together in a really nice little bouquet and take pictures. And that's a big thing. So there are a lot of people that's perfect for like bachelorettes. And these are ideas that you can use. You don't have to do it as a business idea, but maybe you've got somebody that's getting married and you want to do a bachelorette thing for them. This is an interesting thing that you can try if you're a consumer and if you are somebody who's looking for a side business or a side gig. This is something that you can do as well. You do not have to be an expert at flower design. You just pick a lot of beautiful blooms and you can offer those. You could do it at a farmer's market too. So there's lots of options where you get people involved in the flowers, the sensory experience of it. But you're interacting and you're using it as a business model or you're consuming it. Like I said, it works both ways, but there's a lot of options here. They usually call them pop-up stores where they just show up and then you could build your own blooms, that kind of thing. But it's the experience, it's the pictures they take, it's the memories in addition to the bouquet they take home. All right, moon gardens. So you could call it a moon garden, and this is where you're using white or silver or something like that. Conversely, you can also call it like the blue garden or the purple garden, where you do monochromatic plants, all in the same shade. Yeah, so this just happens, it's not going to glow at night or anything like that, but it looks like it. So you can see they've got some trellises here. They're kind of bluish, kind of pretty, and then a lot of white and kind of silver colors. And I guess it does look a little bit like moonlight. So, you can sell a package like that. You could sell flowers like that if you're in that side of it. Or if you're a consumer, if you're looking at your house, maybe you get overloaded by having flowers that there's too many different colors. Maybe you just get sensory overload. There are a lot of folks that have sensory disorders like that. So this would be very calming to look at because it is monochromatic, whites and blues and grays and all of that. And that's soothing. to some. So this would be a very good thing. Also good for themes. So if you maybe you have an Airbnb or a restaurant or something that you run as a business, and it's designing just like anything else. So you design based around that one color. So it's not wild cacophony of color. It's just one color. And it could be the silver, but it could just as well be purple or blue or something else. The no mo alternative. So I actually have a webinar specifically on this coming up March or April or something like that, somewhere down the line here. So we'll go over some specifics that you can have. But this is an idea that's been around for, quite a while. We have a lot of folks that, you buy a house, you move in, the trees are young, and you got a nice lawn. And then 10 or 15 years down the road, those trees mature and you start losing a lot of the sunlight. Well, you start losing your turf as well because most turf needs at least 5 hours. So you'll start noticing the creep until you only have a little bit of grass left kind of in the middle and those trees have grown up. Don't cut the trees down. They provide a lot of energy relief for you. I mean, the difference in temperature between standing in the middle of a hot section of grass or a parking lot and under a nice cool tree, you want that. That's nice. And trees do increase your property value. So it's definitely a good thing to keep those trees. Instead, look at a turf alternative. There are all sorts of plants out there that do well in situations like dense shade or even high sunlight, but they're meant to be something that's not as fussy as turf. Turf can be very fussy, especially if you have to pay the bills for a landscaping company to come out and spray insecticide or fungicide or fertilize. Some of these you don't have to do any of that for. So you can add clover. You may have different types of sedges that you allow. I know some people don't like liriope, but I'm a fan in reasons. I have it in my yard in areas where it's dense shade and a slope, and it does a fantastic job of controlling all of that. It grows perfectly fine. It looks nice. You can actually cut it high like a lawn if you want to. But it stays. If you put some type of a barrier up, it will grow up to that barrier and then it will stop. And it's perfectly happy to do that. And it looks great. You can take some hostas if you have a shady area, put them in pots, and then just stick them in amongst that. Looks really nice. And remember, I said the whole monochromatic thing, where you take shades of green or no fussy plants. That's perfect for that. A lot of them you don't have to do much to. They don't need the excess water. They don't need the fertilizer. They don't need all of that. They're not fussy. They just live. They're happy. And so you could, if you're on the business side, you could get some of those plants and sell them in trays. You can sell the seed mixes if you want to do that. Or conversely, on the homeowner's side, buy that and replace those sections of your lawn that are a little too shady. Go ahead and put some edging up around that area and then add in clover or add in some other type of lawn. Alternative, and then you don't have to fuss with it anymore. I mean, I don't like cutting the grass, still has to be done, but every year I have a little less that I have to worry about, and I let the trees get bigger and more beautiful. And this can be, if you're in an HOA, it may be limiting to you, but if you're not in an HOA, you may be able to get away with a little bit more of this. This falls also kind of under the xeriscaping kind of theory, where you really have zones in different areas of your house. Your high watering zones are going to be closer to the house. Your low watering zones are going to be further away. That's where you would plant these kinds of plants or other plants that don't need a lot of care. Plants that maybe deer don't like as much, but things that are less fussy, if you want to think of it that way, so that you just don't have to spend as much time on your landscape and it still looks good. I think we're all a fan of that. Gravel gardens and dryscapes. So this is not something that we're going to see a ton of around here generally. Generally, we have enough rain here that this is not something that we have to be really thinking about. This is something you would see more out in the desert Southwest or in California. Not to say it's not useful in certain areas. I've seen it used very smartly in certain areas. It's inspired by Mediterranean, which is kind of a dry, semi-desert type climate. And you have to be careful, and I will tell you this, if you choose to use something like this in your landscape, be very minimal about it. And it's probably smart to not plant a lot of plants in there. And it's because here in the South, the summer sun is very hot, and a lot of these rocks will absorb that heat. And so whatever you plant in there needs to be tough enough that it can handle that heat. So here you see some lavender, um, you see some, I can't quite tell what those are in the background. Um, but really, it's going to be plants that are going to be more desert minded. Maybe you could put some yucca out there, things that are tolerant of higher temperatures, things that are tolerant of less water. Um, you might use this in an area out near a stop sign. Maybe an area that gets rolled over a lot, and or someplace that's far enough out that you don't want to get to it. Maybe you're limited in your mobility, and you've got a lot of sunlight, and you're looking for something that you could use that is going to tolerate and not have to be cut all the time. This is an alternative to mulch. Obviously, rocks don't wear down or turn into mulch, so it is an option for that. We usually recommend you choose river stone or something like that, something a little more natural than the white rock, or dark rock, and don't choose some of the rubber mulch alternatives. So on the business side, you can sell bundles again with grasses and succulents and things like that that are more tolerant of this, along with gravels. You might offer design packages, and then you can always add in different types of pavers. This would be good if to mix in with a flagstone kind of pathway or off a deck area or something like that. If you don't want to have to do lumber and all, you could incorporate this into the hardscape, and it could be quite attractive. All right. Cottage core reimagined. So, uh, even when I first started growing up, cottage gardens were a thing. Everybody wanted the white picket fence, and all the beautiful, I think of them as like English type flowers, daisies, and very temperate plants. It's not very temperate here. It's very hot and humid in the summertime. So you have to be a little smarter about what you're planting. So that's the part that you're kind of getting reimagined. So when you're looking at some of the paintings of that kind of stuff, and mix and match. Herbs, you can put herbs in there. Heirlooms, if you can, if they do well, choose natives. Again, something that's going to do well in your area. Roses, depending on where you are. So if you are not so much in the southeast, but maybe out west or north, where you don't have rose rosette or a lot of rose rosette, uh, yes, think about that. Um, Really, it's going to be cottage gardens are a cacophony, that's the word of the day, of colors and styles and all sorts of that. And so if you think about just wandering in your hat in the garden and snipping a flower here and a flower there and putting it together in a pretty little bouquet, while the bees are buzzing around you, that's kind of the thought process here. So you could, if you were on the business side, put together a bunch of different flowers. You can get a flat. You can put in some, I'm trying to think of some good. Coreopsis would be a good one. Just a bunch of different colors that kind of all fit together. Maybe some milkweed, maybe some phlox, garden phlox, all sorts of stuff. And this appeals. Here it says for Gen X and millennials, but I don't think it's necessarily just them. I mean, I'm not a millennial. I'm not a Gen X. I'm a little older than that, but this appeals to me too because, you could cut flowers and bring them in, but you don't have to. And it's a little messy. And that's okay. I prefer my yard a little messy. I like to walk around and enjoy looking and going, oh, look, that's blooming now. That's how my garden, my flower garden, which is in the middle of my vegetable garden, I have a plot in there that I plant with flowers. I never know what's blooming down there. So I'll just wander down and I'll go, I can snip this and bring some of that in the house. And it just brings me a lot of pleasure. And so this is kind of whatever works for you. I mean, throw a little bit of all of it in there. It's just kind of messy, and that's okay. Smart gardens and digital integration. So some of us might be like, oh, yeah, I love it. And some people might say, no, no, I'm not doing that. And that's okay. It's just for those people that really love smart homes and all the good things that come with that. This can be automated right into that. So if you have an irrigation system, a smart irrigation system, that's what most of them are these days, unless you've built it. Uh, it's going to be, like rain sensors. You have everything controlled from an app on your iPhone or your tablet. You can control all of it. So you could be, you know, on vacation in Hawaii and it hasn't rained for a week and you're like, I gotta water the grass. And so you just bring your app up and you tap a few things and the sprinklers turn on and it's all good. So it's easy to incorporate all of that if you have a smart home and you like that kind of stuff. It's a little intimidating if you don't have that kind of stuff, and that's okay. It's just if that's something that you like and you want that at your fingertips, then you can definitely dive into that world because especially with irrigation, um, and this is mostly what we're talking about with irrigation buys, but yeah, I mean, all of that, put it at your fingertips and you don't ever have to worry about your flowers or your plants drying up ever again. So, rain gardens and stormwater solutions. This is a big one. This is one that in the Master Gardener course, we teach a special workshop dedicated to rain gardens. We did an advanced training last summer on rain gardens and stormwater solutions. And there is so much here you can do, and especially in Georgia. We have a lot of hills. And that means that with those hills, you can get a lot of erosion and have a lot of problems. And learning how to deal with those and functionally so that you don't lose half of your soil down the hill is a good thing. So you might want to look into different types of plants and how to configure them on your property to help prevent erosion. I mentioned I live on a fairly hilly lot, and part of it is, well, most of it is very dense shade. And so I had a section where I'd put a bunch of nice azalea bushes, but I still had some next to the driveway, and it was just enough that the water found its way down and started to erode. And so I took that area and I planted a bunch of liriope, and I used the boundaries as the driveway, and then I edged it on the other three sides, and plants filled it out very nicely. It looks really good, nice and lush. It adds a different texture to the area against the driveway and the shrubs, and it's very tolerant of both dry and wet and even a little warm conditions being right next to that concrete. So it's functional. And in my case, that worked great. You may choose to pipe your to tap into your gutter and have a rain barrel and then use that for irrigation. That's very smart. Um, you may choose to have a cistern. You can catch rainwater. I mean, if you want to get a 500-gallon cistern and bury that, you could use that along with a pump to pump it up and actually water your garden if you have an irrigation system. You can have somebody install it for you. You can install it yourself. Some of these systems are very easy to install. We teach in our Master Gardener course. Like I mentioned, we'll have I think it's like a 2.5 hour workshop, and you can, if you want a rain barrel, you can purchase one. John Butler with Gwinnett Water Resources also teaches his own rain barrel classes where you pay and you basically walk away with a rain barrel. But you learn why it's so important. It's important to keep that stormwater on your property and not allow it into the street. Yes, there are ways of collecting that and managing it, but it's so much easier when you keep it on your site. So rain gardens where you're selecting plants that don't mind wet feet. Um, you know, working on some of these citizens scientist type of planners where you're, sitting on a board someplace and working with county officials or something like that to come up with designs. I mean, there's all sorts of ways that you can do that. So if you want to just do it on your home and your own property, that's great. If you want to get out there and help in the public, that's wonderful. Also, we'll take you. There's all sorts of things that we can do for that. All right, high impact seasonal coloration and color swaps. So some people don't want to look at the same old thing all the time. So they're constantly refreshing what's in their pots. So I mean, I tend to get lazy. I don't want to go outside in the summertime. So I'll plant stuff once in the summer and then I just water it. But some people like to swap between summer and then fall. They'll put mums out there. And in the wintertime, they'll get some pansies and maybe some snapdragons and some other stuff. You see this a lot in businesses. They want their areas to look very pretty and very seasonal. Maybe some Christmas decorations, maybe some fall decorations, that kind of thing. But some people really get into it. And so they like that big impact of color and height variations and the whole thriller, spiller, filler thing in their containers. And they just really get into it. And that's awesome. And so on the business side, you could totally offer a subscription service where you come and plant all of these things and then come and change stuff out. You can sell, if you do farmers markets, you can sell those color themed kits. And then you could also sell soil and tools and stuff. But on the homeowner's side, or condo or whatever, you can totally do that yourself too. You don't have to go to the big box stores. I mean, there's other smaller nurseries that would love your business as well, but you can plan ahead. It's the same way you would do it for if you're growing vegetables. This way, you're just growing flowers and you're just making sure your house looks, I call it Southern living ready. Definitely not what my house looks like. But if you really like that, this is perfect for you. Perfect for you. All right, cut flower gardens. This is a big up and coming one. Excuse me, I've been talking a lot lately. So cut flower gardens are popping up all over the place. There are a handful of them around Gwinnett County. And definitely out into and surrounding the metro area. Lots of cut flower gardens. You don't need a ton of property for this either. You do need to be careful about what you're using with pesticides and herbicides and what your neighbors are doing and that kind of stuff, because nobody wants flowers that are eaten up by insects. So you do have to do a lot of management. But you get a really good return on your dollar. So some folks will have cut flowers that they take to a farmer's market and sell. Some folks have a you pick flower farm, or people can come out and they pay X amount of dollars and they can go out and pick whatever they want into a particular size of bouquet. Um, and some people just want a cut flower garden so they can go out in their own garden and pick those flowers and bring them in and put them on their table and enjoy them. And so those are all good things to do. And, another thing that you can do if you're like a master gardener, offer a workshop. Now, last night I did a workshop where we did a floral design, and that was over at Gwinnett Technical College. And we had, I think there were like 6 or 7 or 8 different types of cut flowers and types of greenery and things there. And we learned how to put it all together to make it look beautiful and how to shape things and how to make it all work. And it was really fun. And you could do something like that too, very easily. It's a great workshop. It's something you can host at your church. It's something that you can host in the community. It's a good option for trying to get people interested in gardening and learning a little bit more about flowers in general, and or just the business side of it. So you can also do the business side of it where you're having bouquet subscriptions. I mean, who doesn't like getting flowers delivered to them, right? or just picking them up. So same thing as having a CSA or consumer supported agriculture. This is exactly that. It's just not vegetables, it's flowers. So, most ladies enjoy a good bouquet. And I just tell folks, hey, if you don't have somebody to get one for you, get it yourself. I could buy myself flowers. I have a beautiful bouquet sitting over there that I made last night for myself. So I love cut flowers, and there are all sorts of great aspects to this, either from the business side or from the consumer side, if that's something that you want. All right, we're almost done. So, important design principles. These are kinds of things you want to keep in mind. So, anytime you're doing anything with flowers or shrubbery or any type of ornamental, you're going to have a focal point, whether that's inside, whether that's in a pot, whether that's in outside in your yard. You want something that's going to draw the eye. So, in a planting bed, you want one interesting shaped shrub. Maybe you want a tall one. Maybe you want some smaller ones. You want something that's kind of bold in color or size or shape as an anchor. Um, High margin zones. So you want different, you don't want I'd say monochromatic, that's color, but you don't want them all the same size and shape. You want different sizes, different shapes, taller in the back, medium sized, small in the front, so that you can see everything, so that it's layered. And those you kind of want around your entrances, places where people are going to walk out and see them. So when we think of zones and watering zones and all of that, we also think of maintenance zones in your landscape. And so most people are more comfortable closer to the house. So they're going to put most of their effort in naturally to the areas right in and around their walkway or driveway, places that are right off of where they're going to sit. Your backyard, if you have a house, they're going to put most of their effort in and around there. And then as you move further away from those areas, you're going to put less and less effort in. And so whatever plants are out there are going to basically be, you really want them to be lower maintenance or almost no maintenance. So having all the good stuff to look at near the house, or condo, or if you're doing this with pots or vertical gardens, that's more important. You actually want to see it. You want to enjoy it. Balance. So there's different ways of doing this, and so you can do symmetry. So that's a very formal design. Think of an English cottage garden, or you have a formal, um, like when they do the mazes with the boxwoods, that kind of thing, very formal. And then asymmetry. So it's just kind of a little bit of this and a little bit of that. You maybe are kind of doing some of the rules where you're using tall in the back and then short up front. It's more natural though. It's what you would more see in nature if you were just out walking around. Distributing your visual weight. So you don't want a ton of plants over here and then just a few over there. You want them nicely landscaped, and you want them to be their weight distributed. So, think of a teeter-totter. If you've got somebody super heavy on one side and then super light on the other side, it's going to look a little off. But if they both are about the same, it's more pleasing to the eye. And then kind of avoid the visual overload. So it's possible to have too many plants. I know most people are probably going to say, no, it's not. But yes, it is. And it requires a lot of maintenance and a lot of water. So, don't go too crazy. Don't go nuts on the garden structures, your hardscape sculptures, that kind of stuff, or too much of any one type of plant, or colors. I mean, it looks beautiful, but it's a lot of work. And then contrast. So light versus dark, fine versus bold, and leaf structure, things like that. And then textures. I mean, some of this you can get away with in the textural sensory type gardens, because that's what you're doing. But in a regular garden situation, probably better to kind of tone it down a little bit. Have a visual pop here and there, but you don't need to go overboard. So, and then rhythm. So you're going to look at repeated movements. Maybe you'll have a path, a hardscape path through a garden, and it's leading you to a gazebo or something at the end. You're using odd numbers, you're using repetitive patches of one particular type of plant here and then there, and it's leading you down this way. So there's a flow to it, a pattern or a purpose. And then proportion. So the easiest way to think of this is if you've got a big planter, and then let's say you've got a planter and it's like 2 feet tall and it sits on your porch, and maybe it's a 10 inch or something like that. And then you choose a canna that you put in there, and that canna is 4 feet tall. That will look really odd. You would really need a much taller vase to put that in, right? So match the plant to the space. You don't want something overwhelming a space, whether it's in a pot, whether it's in the ground, wherever it is. You just don't want that. You want that plant to match that space, scale to structure. Um, don't overplant. Don't shove so many plants in a container, and that goes for a raised bed as well, and vegetables. We tell people don't put too much stuff in there. Then you have reduced airflow, there's disease issues, and it just looks cluttered, right? And you have to do a lot of extra watering. So container to plant size, that's always important, and or to the size in ground. So if you only have a small round area around your mailbox and that's it, don't put 10-foot azalea bushes in there. Your mailman will be really angry. Ask me how I know. Yes, I've pruned them. But yeah, you don't want to overwhelm it. You keep it under control. Container to size. And then unity. So the tulips here you see, go up to Gibbs Garden in the spring with the tulips. It's beautiful. It takes a lot of work. It's a lot of planting, but stick with kind of a cohesive theme. Maybe you want to do cottage garden or cottage centric. Maybe you want a more formal garden. Maybe you just don't care and you're like, I'm just going to throw stuff in there. And if it survives, great. There's a lot of us that do that. No shame. But try to, if you're going to do that, hey, let the whole thing be a riot. It's, nobody's really going to fault you. Repeat materials. So, I always say if something's doing well, share it. And it's okay to split or divide that plant and to put it somewhere else in your yard too. Color, form, and harmony. Yeah, that all works together. And visual chaos. I mean, sometimes when you look at stuff and it just doesn't look right, and there's usually a reason for it. So sometimes you just have to kind of stare at it and think about it for a while. But if you're a gardener, hey, we almost always will dig stuff up and move it over, either because it does better someplace else or it just looked out of place there and you've got a better place for it. So things to remember, trends, which are a lot of what I shared here today. So that's going to connect to you, the consumer. If you run a business, that's what you want to do ultimately, is kind of connect to the consumer. So it's stuff that's going to catch your eye. And you may find some of what I put out there today is like, I don't really care. But some of what I put out there, you may be going, that's a really good idea. Maybe I would like to try a cut flower business. I've got 2 acres. I've got a bunch of space out back. I know how to grow plants. Yeah, hopefully I've inspired you with some thoughts. So design, that's going to be your long-term satisfaction. If it's in your house, like in and around your property, and you settled on a design, the satisfaction is going to come to you. That's you looking at your work that you put into it and you saying, wow, that looks really good. I won the Yard of the Month Club. All right. And everybody else going, wow, you put a lot of work into your yard. Looks really good. And the satisfaction that comes with that because you did it. You thought it up, you dreamed it, and you implemented it, and now it looks good. And from the business side, hey, that's all you want from a client is for them to say, I love it. It looks great. So this presentation was kindly lent to me by Dr. Julie Campbell, a wonderful woman, assistant professor over there at the Horticultural Marketing and Consumer Behavior in Athens at UGA. She was nice enough to share this with me because I saw it and I was like, that's a really good presentation. There's a lot of good ideas in there. She shared it more from a business standpoint for folks in the green industry, but I thought there were a lot of good ideas in there completely relevant to homeowners and what they may want to do for their own property. And if you are an entrepreneur and you're thinking of things that you might want to do in retirement, start up a little side gig, or maybe you're younger and you're thinking of how do I get into the hort industry? What can I do? Well, hopefully there were a bunch of ideas here that you might be able to find something useful for. So this is how you would get in contact with Julie if you had any questions about this. And then finally, this is me. I am happy to share the slide deck. If you would like that, you can hit me up there at lisa.klein@gwinnettcounty.com. Or you can give that phone number a call. I usually work better by email. So if you hit me up at email, I am in and out so much that it's really hard to get me to return a phone call sometime. I'm sorry about that. I try to get to it, but it can take a lot longer. And I do record all of my presentations, my webinars here. So if it's a webinar, it's being recorded and it will end up on our Metro Master Gardener YouTube channel, which you can get at that QR code there. Or just go to YouTube and type in Metro Master Gardener and that should pop up. And then you can subscribe. There's probably like 75 or 85 different videos there right now. So you can watch all sorts of good stuff. And again, everything qualifies for Master Gardener CE. Or if you just want to learn more about gardening or production gardening or small space gardening or nuisance wildlife or anything under that whole natural resources arc, you can definitely find that there. All right, so let's see if there's any questions. Okay. Oh, the pretty background. Yeah, that's not my house. It's just a Zoom background. I wish. Great. We've got some out of county people. I love that. Um, awesome. Hi, neighbor. All right. So blueberry flower in the spring, fruit in the summer, red leaves in the fall. Yes. In response to blueberries being interplanted with your landscape, your foundation landscape plantings. Yes. And, in addition, you get the pretty fall color and that kind of thing. You just have to make sure you prune them. As an aside, you can prune blueberries into a hedge. Not people don't think about that very often, but let's say you've got some type of fence in the back and you want to run your blueberry bushes along the side of it. It's a perfect thing to do. You just keep them pruned down so that they don't grow too tall and you can prune them into a hedge. Asian chrysanthemums that are edible. Yeah, so occasionally I will have edible landscaping, or I did one on 10 types of plants that you can make into tea, things like that. So there's a lot of plants in your backyard that you can use for things like that. So that's, also an option. And let's see. Yes. Lettuces and cabbage seeds. So as we move into, it looks like people are chit-chatting in here, which is good. We are coming up on February, which is, I call that like your second season for planting winter vegetables. So lettuces, you can definitely plant lettuces. They're fairly fast growing. You might be able to put some radishes in. You might be able to get some of the faster growing snap peas in, sugar snaps. And if we don't have any more killing frost, you do have to protect them in between. But we have kind of the shoulder season for vegetable growing here in Zone 8A, where you can get that second. If you didn't get it in the fall, it's too late for cauliflower and that kind of stuff. You really needed to get those transplants in then. But you can do lettuces and some of the other colder hardy stuff that you should be able to get some cuttings off of until until it gets warm and that gets bitter and bolts. Squirrels. Yes, so that's squirrels are going to be a different uh that's a nuisance wildlife issue, and I do have a video that is on that Metro Master Gardener YouTube channel on nuisance wildlife and how to manage nuisance wildlife. So squirrels are really difficult, and it's going to depend on where the garden is located and what you do. So, if you have questions on that, because it's probably more complex, and I would really have to look at a picture of your backyard or where you have your garden to kind of give you some tips on how to do that. But a lot of with when you're dealing with a lot of nuisance wildlife, a lot of it is psychology in addition, basically knowing how they tick. We use something called the Hurl model, and the first thing we do is a habitat modification. We try to change things to make it more difficult for the animal, to remove food, to remove water, to harass them, to make it really uncomfortable for them to be there. So the habitat modification would be the first one, and then we would kind of move down the line after that. So if you have questions, you can always reach out to me at that email address, and I can see if I can help you with the squirrel issue. Watercress can be grown really well in ground and bed cover. That's a good idea. Oh, Houston County, nice. Let's see. Unfortunately, with squirrels, feeding stations don't work really well. They're very opportunistic. Um, let's see. As a newcomer, is it possible to get examples of names of plants if you are interested in a healing garden, for example? Yes, yes. If you reach out to us, we can give you some suggestions if you're looking for one of a list of plants that would be acceptable in some type of a textural situation or a sensory type garden. There are some publications out there as extension. Of course, we're always here to send out good scientific based information. So there are publications on that, and we're happy to share those. Let's see. The rain barrel class. So if you're interested in the rain barrel class in Gwinnett County, I don't know if you have to be a resident. If there's somebody outside, I would say recommend if you're outside Gwinnett County, you can reach out to county government and see if they offer anything like that. But you can go to Gwinnett Water Resources classes, and it should have a calendar matrix that lists all the different classes that are being taught and when they're being taught, and you can register on there for those. I believe he charges $40. That's basically just his cost for getting the barrel and getting the kit that he needs, that you'll need to put together. And then in the class, he talks about why you want a rain barrel, and then, everything, he helps you put everything together. So then you can leave with it. So there's a good question there about asphalt shingles. So, I personally do not recommend using water for edible plants from asphalt shingles. There are a lot of chemicals that are in that they use to adhere the sand, and they use the tar and the other stuff. And so it's very appropriate to use for ornamentals. And I definitely recommend using water off a roof with asphalt shingles for ornamental plants, but I do draw the line, and I personally won't use water for vegetable or edible type plants from a roof. Now, if you have a metal roof, generally that's okay. Sometimes people will actually, if you've got a shed and you've got a plastic roof or a metal roof, they'll put gutters off of that and then collect it there, because it doesn't take very long to fill up a rain barrel. But yeah, I personally don't like using asphalt shingles, water off asphalt shingles for edible plants. Okay, I think we're at the end there. So we're about 10 after, and we had a good crowd tonight. We had about almost 60 people, I think, at one point. So that's great. And If you'd like a copy of the slide deck, feel free to grab my email address and send me a request, and I'll be happy to share that with you. And then this particular recording will pop up on the Metro Master Gardener YouTube channel. I would say give me next week and sometime next week, and I'll get it up there. We just started our new Master Gardener class, so it's been highly chaotic trying to get all of that together. And yeah, so it's taking a little bite into my time. But thank you all for attending. I appreciate you being here, and have a good evening. Take care.